Hi, welcome everyone to the Across the Globe Film Festival. My guest here today is David Bellantoni. David Bellantoni is a casting director, and for 20 years he has been. He has cast a wide variety of projects, such as national network commercials, network promos, political ads, feature films, short films, documentaries, corporate industrials, music videos, PSA webisodes, and voiceovers, and probably more. Some of the directors that David has worked with include David Fincher, Tom Hooper, Tony Scott, Peter Berg, John Singleton, and many more. He has also guest lectured as a professor at the American Academy of Dramatic Arts, the Lee Strasberg Theater and Film Institute, the American Musical and Dramatic Academy, as well as Pace University, which happens to be my alma mater. David is also an award-winning playwright and theater director who has produced in Los Angeles as well as New York. He is a rare combination of casting director, writer, director, and professor. They say musical theater majors are a triple threat, but David seems to be a quadruple threat in the industry, and we're so lucky to have him here today. Welcome, David.
Thank you.
I want to start off because you do have quite a unique background. I would, if I dare say, a little different from other casting directors. So I wanted to ask you, did you get into the industry through casting or was it through a different medium?
No, I was originally, I had a whole other career. I studied political science. I went to Washington. I was going to go into the State Department. And then when I moved to Washington from California, where I originally went to college, I'm from New York. But once I realized what working at a huge bureaucracy would mean, I realized it wasn't for me. So then I moved back home to New York and I started getting into the film business through production. So some of my earliest things on production, I worked as a PA and I worked as a prop person, a property master in the art department, and I worked as an AD, production manager. And so I was working as an AD, which is basically working with the actors on set and making sure the director has what he or she needs. I started to do that. That was my way in. And my way into casting was I actually got injured on set and I had to leave for a while. I had a grip dropped a huge plank on my head by accident. We were doing like, 18-hour days in a row up on the mountain in California, and people were tired and it was windy and it was cold. And one of the guys in the grip department was holding up a big board and he lost control of it and it slammed me in the head. And I had to leave the business for several months because I had basically concussion. And everybody, as you probably know in this business, is freelance. So once the job is over, everybody's looking for another job. Well, I wasn't available, so other people took my place. So as I recovered, I was working on a script with a writing partner. He says, you know what, a good friend of mine manages a casting studio. This was in LA, in North Hollywood. You should go meet him. And I did.
And did you?
I met the guy. Great, love you, love you. We should start coming in. I'm like, this is actually easier than production. I was like, I don't have any more 4 a.m. calls. It's basically, 9:30 to 6. I was very comfortable working with actors already, and so I just started assisting casting directors and running sessions and running camera.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
So you already got the horror deal of how a film set works and everything before you even got into casting.
Exactly. Which I think is very helpful for, anybody. You realize how much a collaboration, everything in film or whatever production it is, everybody matters.
Yeah. It's actually really interesting that you studied political science before you went in. I was actually quite, maybe this is normal for casting offices, I don't know, but I was surprised that you also cast political ads. And maybe I'll jump around here a little bit, but I'm just really curious about that. How do you cast political ads? How does that work?
Well, there weren't many of them. You know what it is? That's mostly voiceover.
Oh, okay.
That's a lot of VO, as you can imagine. Look at, like, I don't know if you've seen the Lincoln Project ads. I had nothing to do with that, but a lot of that is voice actors.
I see. Okay. So what when the politicians start shaking hands, those people aren't extras; they're real people.
Yeah. Well, exactly. Well, a lot of political ads are found footage from campaigns or things that politicians have said over the years, or news footage. And then, so you have a really good editor, but then you've got a really great narration, voice narrator kind of going through and putting the story together.
I see. I see.
Yeah.
Okay. Wonderful. And did you get started on writing while you were casting, or did that already start before
That
you?
was before.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. I started that. I had an English minor, so I always wrote. And I actually started writing plays first. I mean, I wrote screenplays early, but I realized like how they're very difficult to get made. It's just, you know, you write a feature screenplay. It's like, yeah, I need a few $1 million. That's not easy. And
As
so after
opposed
a
to
while,
if you
I was,
as
yeah, go ahead.
no worry. I was gonna say, as opposed to a play where you can just do a reading or do a small production.
Correct. Yeah. I mean, that's really why I was tired of having, you know, so much of my work sit on shelves. And I hooked up with people who were theater directors first, actually, believe it or not, in Los Angeles first. And you don't think of LA as a great theater community, but there's incredible amounts of talent out there, actors, directors. So many people move out from New York, and a lot of them still want to work in theater, and it's not the same kind of level of theater you find, but there's a lot of stuff out there to be done, and that's where I was like, you know what, I want to see the work up. I want to work with actors in rehearsal. I want to workshop. And I realize how much I love doing that, because when I write, my work, I'm not too precious about it. I believe, you know, after working with actors for so many years, everybody who collaborates to make the piece better. And so
Yeah.
through workshopping and rehearsals, I love seeing how things improve based on what I started.
Yeah. Well, that's actually a question just came up in my mind, because I have a bunch for the actor's point of view, but maybe for those who are writers, that are constantly writing scripts for short films or for feature films, and they're hard to get picked up, as you said. Would you recommend maybe someone writing a play version of that, putting it up on its feet with actors, and then eventually transitioning into film, or you think those are just two completely different things?
Not at all. Not at all. Um, because I mean, this may jump ahead a little bit earlier, but we talked about my film Three Kings, which
Yes.
your partner John Fessler is sales agent for. Well, that started as a play, so I love adapting it. So it's if you're comfortable adapting something from stage to screen, and I've adapted things from like prose, like a short novel, to a play, and then a script. I've done all three, and I think it's a great challenge as a writer to do that, right? Because film is a visual medium. I think theater is so much about dialogue and relationships. But
Right.
yeah, I mean, I think it's great. I think it's a wonderful thing to get the project up on its feet. Like with Three Kings, one of the best things I did is cast the same actors, so they already knew the characters really well. So there was a matter.
Cast the same actors from the play to the film.
That's right. That's right. So I didn't have to spend all this time in rehearsals. They knew the characters cold. They already had a run,
Yeah.
and so that was wonderful. So then it's a matter of just tweaking performances and managing the technical elements of filmmaking, and bringing the performances in a little bit. And but I didn't have to sit there and coach the actors about the characters and the relationships. They had them down.
Yeah. So
So that
that's
was
super
yeah, I would
important.
absolutely recommend that if somebody's comfortable doing that. I think it's a wonderful thing to do. Because one of the people uh, who I really look up to as a writer is Shanley. So think about him, or so many other great writers have gone like Sam Shepard too. So those are two playwrights but they also have written scripts. They also worked in film. I mean, Shepard was also an actor.
Right.
Uh, but I think it's a great creative thing. It shows range to be able to move back and forth.
And I assume you were also the casting director on your film that you directed.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay, so
Right.
you know what? Let's jump into the festival, and just to brief everybody, Three Kings is a film that you made, and it has been submitted into our festival. And I wanted to mention, that this is a festival that's going to be, really open to everyone. there's really no limits as to what you can submit. I'm sure there'll be rules and regulations and those kinds of things. But I wanted to ask, for the filmmakers who, may be casting films that are short films, that are indie films, with not big as budgets as professional productions, and those directors, and the people making those films that may not know everything about casting, and they also may not be able to afford a casting director, or like I said, just may not know anything about it. What kind of advice would you give them? Maybe some casting 101, when they're looking at actors through Actors Access and Backstage. What would your advice be?
Yeah, I mean, Actors Access and Backstage, definitely. But use your, if you're kind of in the business as an actor director, I mean, use your network. I honestly, sometimes I'm casting a reading right now. I went through my Facebook friends and my Instagram friends. Now, let's face it, a lot of my friends are actors, but a lot of times I go through, it's like, oh, right, I forgot about this person. I want to read them. So, I mean, that's a pretty, easy way to do it, because it's, of course, you can supplement stuff through Actors Access and casting networks and Backstage and all that kind of stuff, where you submit and you get all kinds of things back. But I mean, for me, it's just, I'm fortunate because I know so many actors. So it becomes a key thing, I would say, is not only finding the actors, but really make sure the puzzle for casting is about actor availability. And that can be very difficult, managing all of that. Yes. Because if you got 8 to 10 people and you need everybody together, and say, maybe you need 4 people in one scene and 4 in the other. And if you're casting a play or you need rehearsal, you need everybody there. That's the big challenge. Everybody's got different schedules, and you really have to make sure that that you can lock that stuff in. Because a lot of times you start losing people. Oh, I've got this, I've got that. So you just have to make sure you have backups ready to go. During the middle of production, I've had actors, book out because they got an episodic TV, and I'm paying them for a short play, which is not. Right. And so because I know actors who are who are working actors, I can't tell them like, okay, you're going to give up $50,000 for my play, right, where I'm paying you a couple hundred a week. It's a generalization, but there's theater for theater's sake. A lot of people in LA are like, they love theater. They still want to do theater, but they want to do theater so they can be seen by a TV agent.
Right.
And that can, sometimes that happens. Right. Not all the time. I know plenty of LA actors who are like, take it really seriously, but I had that happen personally in a couple of situations. And the actor was like, oh, a couple of them were like, I'm so sorry. And, but I have to, I need the money. And like, what can you do?
It's, I mean, because you have such a strong background in theater, do you view actors with theater experience a little bit differently than those who may not have that experience, possibly in LA?
Most of the actors I deal with have all of it. The LA resume often will have film and TV first, and the New York resume will have theater first. It's usually the strongest.
Okay. Yeah.
In the resume where you have the most credits. But I mean, in my experience, every actor who I've dealt with has done a little bit of all of it and wants to do all of it. I'm sure you're the same, right? I'm sure you want to do, of course, theater, but I'm sure you want to branch into TV and film and all the other things.
Yeah.
So yeah, the biggest difference for me in casting is when I'm dealing with somebody who has a musical theater background, and I'm dealing with film or something on camera, and I really have to bring them back. They want to play to the back seats. And I'm like,
right.
I'm on close up of you, right? You got to like, I mean, just intimate. Can you do that?
Yeah.
Okay, I can do that. No. Less, just bring it way down.
Right.
That's always a challenge for me.
Yeah, and I think it's just so, we had a guest, Dan Rodriguez, who, works behind the scenes on films, but, he's also really into directing, and that's something that he wants to branch out into. And I was actually surprised to hear from him how he realized how important casting was, that he didn't realize before, because from the outside, it seems that there's, thousands of actors out there, there must be enough where you can, put one together. But he also mentioned that casting isn't just a job. He it's really an art because you have to put these puzzle pieces together. And you, and correct me if I'm wrong, you only have a limited amount of time in the casting room or from the self tape you receive to really have that insight and knowledge to know what works best,
Yeah.
and so forth.
Yeah, no, there's no question about that. To me, I think it was Kubrick who said that casting is like 75% of directing. A lot of directors have said that, especially if it's a character driven piece. You know, it's one thing if you're shooting some sort of image oriented thing and it's geese flying over a mountain. Okay. But if you are, you know, dealing with characters, I mean, it's like to me, it's writing and casting. If those two things are there, your job as a director is just so much easier. It's just a great cast. You know, it just makes a good project on paper better. In my experience, yeah, I think it's so important. I mean, any project I want to get involved with, I really want to be heavily involved with the casting because I really believe in that. And sometimes I work hard to get somebody in a role, and sometimes I meet somebody and I know immediately, like, you're right. Sometimes it's just a gut feeling. But yeah, there is an art, but there's administration to it. Like you're saying, it is a puzzle. And sometimes, you know, I'm watching the Sopranos podcast right now, and I'm getting these backstories about all these different people that read for these different roles, and then that didn't work out, and then they shifted over and got cast to a different role. That happens. That kind of thing happens a lot in my job too. We'll maybe read somebody for one thing, and then like, well, maybe let's try out for this other role. And oftentimes it really, you know, it works out. Or sometimes somebody's not available, or somebody gets sick. You know, people drop out all the time. So there is definitely an administrative side to that. But the human side is, you know, I can't emphasize how important it is. If the writing and the casting isn't there, I think, you know, your project is fucked. If you don't have that ready to go.
Well, that's good to know. I wanted to ask also,
right?
you know,
I mean,
as a
you as
cast,
an actor, don't you agree to that? I mean, how important it is?
yeah, I mean, I can certainly, I think writing, especially when I receive, whether it's a scene or an entire script, if it's good writing, it sort of naturally comes out, or it's easier to get to where I need to be. If it's not good writing, and when I say not good writing, that, you know, it could be, you know, a short film that's written by someone who's new to the industry, but it can also be just a generic network TV show that is just not very well written. And then I just have to try harder, and my choices have to be a little bit more
you have to work harder.
Specific. Yeah, I have to work harder. Yeah.
And the hard work may still be mediocre because the writing is just not getting you there, unless you know, the directors, and you ask the director, do you mind if I improvise a little bit here?
Yeah.
Well, you know,
I sometimes when I watch TV shows, and it's just like really bad writing, and I have a friend next to me who may not be an actor. He's like, oh, it's such bad acting. And then sometimes I can really pinpoint, I feel like that actor's trying really hard. The writing is not so well.
That's right. Yeah. Especially if the dialogue is stilted or clunky, and you can see the actor really struggling to, because that's another really great art form is the writing of dialogue and writing the way people actually speak, and not this kind of stilted thing where it's like, no, people stop and start and they pause, and you know, they're you know, bits and pieces of sentences and fragments. That's, you know, you gotta really listen and listen to the way actual people speak, and especially if there's a cultural element to it or an accent element to it.
Yeah, definitely. I sometimes, maybe I shouldn't say this, but sometimes when I'm in subways and I hear something that sounds interesting, I'll just start recording on my phone, and then label, you know, people talking as characters. And sometime in the future, there's a character that I, you know, sometimes just refer back to. I'll just play the recording and just try to get the conversation, and the whole, the essence of it into my head.
I had a friend of mine, I did a show years ago, and I had a friend of mine go on the subway and record conversations of people, and I end up using it in the show as part of like a soundtrack.
Yeah.
For like, I mean, that's a great thing about New York is it's, you know, it's characters. I mean, obviously not in the pandemic now, but outside of that, it's, you know, there's characters everywhere, and that's the beauty of really just observing people.
your relationship as a casting director with directors and producers, whatever you may be casting, whether it's TV or film or theater, a lot of the times, you don't have the final say. It's someone else, someone who is, does have the final say. Like I say, the director of a show, director of a film, producer of a show or a commercial. What is your relationship between all those people, and do you favor one over the other?
Because a lot of the casting I do is short form commercials. So yes, basically they're our clients. We work for them. So a lot of my, the best relationship I have is with the director. That's the most creative person, but I do have to deal with the producer in terms of whether it's a SAG job or not, and what the rate is the actor's getting paid, and what the scheduling, so the administrative stuff deals. But a lot of the performance elements, I'm working with the director. So in the end, the first call, when we bring actors in for the first audition, that's really all about the casting director's taste and skill and knowledge of good acting. But then when we get the callbacks, we're still really important, but a lot of times we're advisory.
Yeah.
So it's really when we come down, when everybody leaves the callback room and we're sitting there and we're going through the puzzle and working through, in the end, it's really the director and if there's an ad agency involved, the ad agency also is very involved with choosing. So really, there's a political element though there too, because when I've worked with A-list directors, like the Finchers, et cetera, the ad agency will just step back and let David pick. But sometimes there's a newer director, 26 years old out of NYU, and that person has to kind of look over his or her shoulder all the time, while the agency is really the person with the element with the power. So it does shift, but in the end, it's true. It's like the final decision is not really mine necessarily. There's a lot of times they're not sure, and they'll be like, David, what do you think about this person? Are they easy to work with? What's their exposure like? Have they been seen too often? Do they have any conflicts? Those kind of things. But it's really rare in casting where I'm in a room in a callback where I'm like, this is who you're picking. Ba, 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 ba. It's really the director and the ad agency making the final call. And don't forget, then I have to put together a selects tape, and then the director and the agency have to go to the final client, which is like the Coca-Cola executive or the person from Tide or Colgate-Palmolive or Crest or whatever spot we might be doing. So they have to so it's a number of different hoops that, it's by committee. And so I tell actors like this in class, it's like, just a lot of times it's not you.
Yeah.
It's not that you blew a line.
Yeah.
It's like all these other things come in, they're looking for diversity. What about younger versus older? This person's not available. We want to have a family that looks like this person. Well, that actor was the best, but this person, we need to build a family. So they all have to resemble each other. So there's all kinds of elements that come in where it's not necessarily that the actor screwed up. It's all these other decision by committee.
Yeah. I was, when I was in school, I learned, just like you said, that the casting director, many of the times does not have the final say.
Right.
And it's usually someone else, but, your job is really to give the actor what he needs to make the performance better or closer to what they are looking for.
That's right.
And so ever since that point, I always, thought of a casting director as sort of my rehearsal mentor in that sense, because I think the best thing for a casting director, correct me if I'm wrong, is if the actor just has the best performance possible. So it's not so much that you're looking at which actor is better, you're trying to get the most out of every actor, so then the decision becomes easier.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I mean, we definitely, I tell actors, like, we're on your side. We want you to do well. That's why we're submitting you to the director. It's like, we don't want to submit somebody who's wrong. So yes, you have to be right for the spec. There's no question.
Yeah.
So if I've got, Caucasian and African-American 25 to 35, I'm not looking at submissions for a 70-year-old grandfather.
Right.
Right. But so given that you are right for the spec, then absolutely, I'm one of those people who work very hard in session to get the best performance and sculpt it the best I can.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm submitting the best of the actor
Yeah.
on that particular day.
And I have to say, ever since the pandemic, and we as actors we have to submit more self tapes. I sort of miss that direction that I would have one on one in a room, because an actor, uh, or I hope that most actors come in with certain choices, and then those choices come out of the homework you did from the script reading, breakdown of the scene, and then adding a little bit of your own flavor. Nevertheless, these choices are always at risk because in the long run, you don't know what they are looking for or what it's going to be. And every time you get feedback from the casting director, it's like, oh, there's another hint that's just got solved. Another mystery that I had working at my desk at home. Now I know what it's about. Let me quickly adjust it to what they need it to be. Whereas now with self tapes, you just really just have to be confident in your choices, and you send it off into the abyss and hope for the best.
Yeah, no, it is. It's definitely, it's a challenge now for the actors to do that. And I have so many actors who talk to me is like, yeah, I miss being in the room with you.
Yeah.
Because yeah, just to have another person, it's like, it's also, you're not getting all the information because it's really, we get the information from the director and then we bring it down to you. Sometimes there's new information that comes in during the day that's a little bit of a shift. Because sometimes the directors will request, hey, can we see some of the submissions, and they'll look at it like, now shift the direction here, we want to have that. And then there's sometimes where I'll see something really amazing from an actor, maybe about 11:30 or 12, and I'll decide to shift my direction based on that actor. Something that person did is like, wow, this person really nailed that moment, really found that adjustment, really read the script, really improvised it in an interesting way. And yeah, all of that is missing when you're doing that from home. So yeah, I totally get it. I mean, thankfully we can still have that, but the business is not the same.
Yeah. Do you, and that was going to be my next question, but I think you kind of answered it. If an actor, changes your mind as to what you were looking for to what you are now maybe looking for.
Yeah, like I said, I mean, there's sometimes, if I'm working with a director who is, in some cases, like if you're dealing with big pharma jobs, there's no improvising. It's written by attorneys, so you're really, kind of dealing with tone mostly. But if I'm dealing with a director who really wants to see some improvisation, and an actor shows me, something really interesting or cool, because a lot of times you deal with, there's a lot of repetition in what you're doing, dealing with the day, and a lot of times actors will come up with the same stuff, and I can tell that they've rehearsed it, so it's not really fresh. It's not really improv in the moment. It's something they thought of in the waiting room, like, yes, this might be good. And I could tell the difference as opposed to somebody who's like completely in the moment and firing off something that just came into their head. And that to me is like, that's more magic.
Yeah, and
So,
that happens a lot with commercial auditions, I
yeah,
find.
yeah. But even in other situations too, where it's like, you can, to me, like that's superior acting. That's a better performer who is just has more confidence. It doesn't have to lean on something and comes in. It's like has the backbone, has the anchor of whatever the script is or the copy is, but is completely open to whatever, a pigeon flies through the window and they're going to use it.
Yeah.
As opposed
Yeah.
to, oh my
Yep.
God, can we cut? Somebody else is like, for example, self tapes now where we're dealing with people in their apartments, and I've seen dogs jump through the frame and people in the background barbecuing and drinking beers and cursing, and the good actors like they're using that,
Yeah.
and if
Yeah.
it's really good, that's the take I'm sending.
Okay. Well, I have a question for you, because I found that during the pandemic, the I don't want to say quality, but the way that actors self-tape now as opposed to before, where and maybe I'm wrong, so correct me if I am, self-tapes were supposed to be very strictly, perfect, your lighting, your background. And now I actually just took an acting class, and I'm an acting studio. And, you know, the teacher sort of said, use everything you can, meaning whether it's props or your background, even add a little bit of music, just to make it as real as possible, because you are now in control of your environment. Whereas
Mm.
in the casting office, you may, you have what you have, whether it's a chair, the clothes you're wearing. Now you have so much more accessibility so that when you submit your self-tape, you can really stand out. How do you feel about that?
I'm not sure. I don't know if that person that you spoke to is that somebody academic, or is that somebody who actually works in the business? Because in my view, an actor. Okay, so but not casting or a director. I get, yeah, yes, there's something to that. I do think self tapes have gotten better in quality because people had to. So the audio quality is better. The video, more people have webcams. More people have the blue backgrounds. So yes, I think being at home affords you all kinds of stuff. And I was teaching classes the other night. It's like, is it okay that we use props from our house? I'm like, well, absolutely. If the script calls for it, if you're just unilaterally using stuff because you want, you need a blanket to hold. But if it's in the script, absolutely go get, whatever you need to get. That part is cool. But I think the technical elements of audio, video, lighting, framing has gotten better because actors have had to do that. Self tapes used to be horrible, but now it's part of so much. It's the majority of our business, almost entirely now. Because I have not cast anybody in person since March.
Yeah,
and now I do believe that this is actually, I think there's going to be. It's going to come back in person casting, but I think this is going to be with us.
Is it harder to read chemistry when you're doing maybe, a chemistry reading virtually rather than you did in person? Or a better question would be, can you see the chemistry virtually?
Yes, I think you can. Absolutely. Yeah, you can read somebody. I can read you. Like, can you read the chemistry between two actors, or if it's one actor and I'm directing them? I think either way I can.
Okay, interesting. Yeah. Between actors, and I think this is something that actors in the back of their minds always think about. And there are a bunch of answers out there, but is chemistry natural, or can someone work for it during an audition?
I think it's a bit of both. I mean, if it's there natural, I think the best actors can open themselves up and find that chemistry. To some extent, chemistry is like, it kind of hinges on how open or closed are you when you're on camera. And I think a really good actor is like, okay, here's, you get one actor who's really open, the other one who's kind of locked up and nervous and kind of just, not in the moment. That makes it hard for the first actor who's trying really hard to remain open and find that chemistry. So it really, I think a lot of it depends on how open that person is and how flexible, how confident, how committed you are to that particular character and the relationship as it's been written. I think the writing of it matters, right? If the relationship is bullshit, the way it's written, and it seems it doesn't feel like it has layers or dimension, you're kind of like, well, I don't even believe it on the page. I think that makes it harder. But if you have a really wonderfully developed relationship in the characters and you've got some good actors, then, then even if on the Zoom thing, I think it can work.
Nice. David, I wanted to now transition into your role as a professor at many institutions and now at Pace University where you teach. Is there anything you found out about actors working in a classroom rather than behind a casting desk?
I've been teaching for almost as long as I've been casting. The difference with Pace, I teach professionally at other places in the city where you've got actors who were 20 years old and actors who were 70. So that becomes really interesting. So you've got, when I'm in Pace, all you guys are 20, 21 years old. And so the difference for me was, like, you guys come in, you all know each other, kind of goofing around. There's already, somebody sleeping with somebody maybe, and you have all of this stuff happening. Where in my professional class, everybody comes in and they don't know each other yet. So there's a shift for me in that, though, when you've got everybody's still kind of figuring themselves out, or in the pay situation, there's clearly, clicks and things like that. Um, but for me, the classroom situation opens it up for, um, casting can be quick, right? Somebody comes in, they audition a little bit, and then they leave. But if I'm in a classroom for 3 hours, it allows me to get to know the people better.
As a professor and also a casting director, is there anything that you always like to ingrain in actors that you wish you would see more in casting sessions?
Hmm. Um,
Can also include maybe, your own pet peeves,
yeah,
or something that would just make maybe a performance better, just an overall
yeah. I
anything.
mean, I go through like a list of pet peeves, and there's basic things like just, um, show up on time. If you're going to be late, let me know. Turn your phone off. Uh, Go to the light. I can always tell a green actor is like, there's the camera. Go opposite the camera. Go to where the light is the brightest. Don't walk behind the camera. We're not
Yeah.
having coffee together.
Right.
So and I think early on, the kids at Pace are just, they're not used to that. That's why I think it's just a great thing, Pace being in New York, for example, right? Because now you get all the things, you get Alexander technique, and you get all these wonderful things that you can learn in academia, and you're reading Shakespeare, and you're dancing, and you're taking your sword fighting, and you're working with accents, you're doing all this wonderful stuff. But a lot of times actors coming in with this great degree don't know what to do when they get into an audition room. They don't have technique
Yeah.
for that.
Yeah.
And so when you have people, academics and actors can come in and do that, yes. But when you have casting directors and industry people coming in because they're in New York, or if you're in LA, or maybe also Chicago, Atlanta, wherever. But if you're in a school outside of those areas where you're not really getting industry, I think you're missing out.
Yeah.
So I think, yes, early on with some of my auditions at Pace, because the kids are just not ready. They haven't been, and a lot of them get really big because they're theater people. The performances get very big, or they're not sure how to handle close-ups. They don't understand the elements of camera versus stage. Um, so yeah, but I mean, a lot of it is professionalism. The stuff about just your basic stuff about being on time, and understanding how to be a professional
Yeah.
and being responsible.
And do you find actors that, are already experienced to have, maybe big agencies or big managers who still lack that type of professionalism?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I think they can get away with stuff. Not many of them, but yeah. I mean, a big one is like, if you're gonna book, if you're really good, you get a call back, and then you book the job, then you blow the job off. Um, that's a really big deal to not do, because people have, I described earlier what it's like, um, the casting by committee. So there's a lot of work that goes into booking you and getting that done. So if the actor's like, yeah, I got these other things to do, that's a booking, and they're just gonna like fly off somewhere, there's a lot of blowback that happens after that, because the director will yell at us, and we will yell at your agent, and then your agent will yell at you. And keep that on a calendar, and make sure that you have all that stuff. That's part of your job. It's like, to me, it's like, I tell the kids at Pace, it's like, you are kind of running your own business.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
a lot
We,
of
we,
times,
we've been told a lot of that as well. Yeah.
yeah, I'm sure. Because a lot of times, yes, when you get your agent and your manager, but if you don't tell them, what if you do a self-submission and you don't tell anybody? And then they want to
Yeah.
book you, but your manager is already, and your agent has actually booked something for you as well on the same date. And now you're kind of like, oh, fuck. Oh, I forgot to tell you. And now, that becomes, you got to unravel that stuff.
Yeah. How do you look for actors when you're casting something? I mean, we know the obvious thing where you reach out to agencies, and you have them, send you their best actors. Um, but there's always that notion in the actor's head that a good audition will, have the casting director remember you. Um, Is that true? And if so, do you, just keep the headshot and resume, or do you just, have it in the back of your head that you remember this actor wasn't right for that role? I have something coming up. How many of those actors do you bring in as opposed to just the general route of reaching out to
Oh,
agencies?
we'll mix it up. Yeah, definitely. Yes, we will definitely, uh, reach out to the agents and managers that we like to work with, of course. Um, but it can't always be the same. Directors don't want to see the same. They want to see, new faces coming in too. And so, yeah, there's people who it's like may have come in months ago, and I'll say, yeah, I'll remember. They're like most actors, like, yeah, you won't. But then, like maybe 8 months after, I'll be like, I'll call them in, and they'll say, wow, you remember? Like, yeah, I told you I would.
Wow.
So sometimes there is that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm trying to cast somebody right now in something, uh, and she was in a play of mine in the '90s, and uh, and I've met so many people, but she's like still, of course, the character's much older now, but it's a similar, it's a the play's been rewritten, then I can make this particular couple older, but she's still perfect.
As a casting director, it's every actor wants to get discovered, but I also, found out that casting directors also, have goals to discover someone of their own. Is that something that you share? And if so, do you want to share, anybody or actors along the way that,
Oh
uh,
yeah, my God, I love that. I mean, I've through the years, I've worked with a lot of people who shot up, you know, and uh, and some people who I've helped along the way. I mean, the best thing is like when I have an actor come back and be like, the fact that you booked me on this thing is I can get my health insurance, I can have a down payment for my house, I can start putting a kid in college. Uh, I have a very good friend of mine who like blew up. She's on Cobra Kai now, and now I knew her on Instagram. There's like 56 56 likes and followers now, 14,000 people.
yeah,
I have another good friend who I
it's
cast.
a good show too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, she plays one of the leads. She plays the girlfriend, um, and I used to cast her all the time and work with her. And another person who was in one of my one-man shows, and now he is kicking butt and now is a series regular in the Ethan Hawke series about John Brown, which is on Showtime, and he's second billing. And so I've got a few people who are like who've hit it on TV recently, um, and a lot of people on HBO and of course Law and Order. These are the New York things. Um, but yeah, over the years, it's like I love it when people who I've worked with shoot up and make something of themselves, and it's exciting. It's
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
But keep in mind, like this business is very, they're not always going to be on the top of the mountain.
True. It's interesting you say that. I just read an article about Regina King's movie that most
I
likely
just
will
went to show
definitely be.
Regina King in Los Angeles.
What's that?
I used to audition Regina King in Los Angeles many years ago.
Oh wow,
Yeah,
that's so cool.
yeah. So it's like, yeah.
Well, she wrote or there was an article about her with her movie. Oh God, it's called I think One Night in Miami. I think they asked her why she didn't use big stars in her film. She knew this was going to be something that was going to be potentially big, and she said, "Well, none of the big stars wanted to audition."
Mm.
And so she went, the casting route, and now, of course, it's a success. May even be more of a success, and that just goes to show how important casting is, and how
Yeah,
important it is for actors, even like you said at the top of the mountain, to keep that rhythm of auditioning.
yeah. I mean, some shows, God bless them, they will, as opposed to requiring big stars to get it made, will decide to cast a lot of great actors who don't have big names yet, and then they'll be broken. They will break through as a result of the series. And that's happened in a lot of cases. Maybe you've got one big star, but then you've got a lot of people who kind of like really strong working actors, and then they explode.
Yeah, and then that's where the chemistry part comes in, connecting those different types of actors.
That's right. That's exactly right. And I think it takes guts for some producers to go with that. because they always want the sure thing with a huge name star, but that doesn't always mean it's going to be successful.
Yeah. And I also wanted to say, sometimes I'm sure you watch with a much more keen eye when it comes to casting, when you watch shows and movies. I watch for the acting when I watch material, but sometimes it's very obvious that the acting is very good. And sometimes there's a bad apple here or there that maybe sometimes just breaks the dynamic that could have been.
Yeah,
Do you see that a lot?
yeah, yeah. No, it's true. I mean, you got a great rhythm set up with two or three actors, and then another one can come in, and I've seen it. Yeah, it's where it just, requires everybody, especially when it's like rhythm back and forth with dialogue, ba 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 ba, and all of a sudden you get to that other person, and it's like the energy just drops, and yeah, you can really tell, and it impacts everything. It impacts the way sometimes it's hard for the other actors to recover in that moment, and yeah, so every role really does matter, and I've seen that.
Yeah.
I've seen that many times in auditions where, um, clients will say to me in the callback and say, "Wow, we really like this dude. Do you really think that person, what's the story? What happened there?" I said, "Well, that particular actor pulled the energy away from those two. Do not think that those two actors are wrong or they're bad. It's just they were impacted by that other person."
Yeah. Yeah. I know what you're talking about just from an actor's point of view, where I can do the same scene with two different actors. And all of a sudden not only my energy, but just my choices sort of get rumpled up in my head. And it just comes naturally as if I didn't know what just hit me.
Right.
Just from the tension, or looking for the right word, but just sort of the air between you. Also, it just happens in real life when you sort of start acting like somebody else. It's the same for when I have a character prepared and my character
Of
now
course.
starts acting differently because of the relationship with
Right.
whatever actor I'm working with.
Exactly. That same thing happens in real life when you're meeting a new person or
Yep.
you're interviewing for a job, and it just
Yeah.
you can meet one person one day, and then you go, oh, you got to meet so and so in a different department, and wow, this first person I felt great about, the second person like gave me nothing.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
get this wall, and that of course is gonna impact you in real life, can impact you in performance.
Yeah. David, we are running just right under time, so I'm going to ask you our favorite last question here on the show. If there's something that you want to talk about that maybe I missed, please let me know, and I'll squeeze it in here. But if not, I will end with what we ask every guest, which is, what are your three favorite films of all time?
Oh, oh man,
And they
off
can't
the
be
top.
films that you cast, because that wouldn't be fair.
Yeah, no, but I have, let's see, right? So off the top, Godfather 1, Network, Inherit the Wind, that goes even farther. Uh,
Right.
yeah, that's off the top because like I ask actors,
I know, and
sometimes it'll shift, depending on what day it is.
yeah, I
Uh,
know.
CF1 is all
I'm the
kind of
same.
in there, but usually like I'll pick from like a Sidney Lumet or a Martin Scorsese or somebody in that layer. Those are my favorite people. I mean, I could go into Moonstruck. That's another favorite of mine by far. Um, so yeah, that's kind of where I land. And it's
Super,
great foreign
super.
films too. So it's like with that kind of era, 70s, mid 80s, is what I aspire to and what I remember.
Well, I'll certainly watch it. Maybe we'll have you back on the show for a critique of some of these films.
Yeah.
And David, is there any way that our viewers can find you on social media, blogs that you write, anything like that?
Yeah, you can go to davidbellantoni.com. I've got a site and it kind of lists all the things. It's got the plays that I've done and the films and what I do. It's kind of casting, training, film, theater, that kind of thing. So it's pretty much set up like that. So they can find me that way.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
David, really, thank you so much for joining us here today. You are going to give us a huge boost for our podcast, because I'm sure that our listeners will be very intrigued to hear of what you said here today. And we'll let you know if any feedback from some of our viewers, but they could always go to your website and find out more. David, thank you so much for being here.
My pleasure.
And I wish everyone Good evening.